Hello again, Melissa and Clayton. We are recording the fourth session of the Wisening Framework, as I'm calling it right now, the 7 cognitive styles that we can cultivate to become wiser. And today I'm going to introduce the last 2 cognitive styles, understanding and transformation. Before, in the first 3 sessions, I introduced aspiration, mindfulness, open-mindedness, self-regulation, and intuition. And today is the day of understanding what is that we are doing and cultivating transformation. Understanding is, for me, is composed of 2 main areas that they together help us reframe the way we did things before. And that's hopefully what creates the last cognitive style, transformation. Reframing, understanding things in a different way. And the way I do it, or I hope we can all do it in the Wisdom Project, is by embracing flow. I remember, I wait until we are in the session where we cover understanding to mention the word flow. But I remember you, Melissa, before that, making the comment, oh, it's just that everything feels in flow. And inside, I was like, oh, yes, 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 because that's what I'm trying to do, to create that sense of flow. Flow is a technical term in psychology that means that you are so engaged in an activity that you lose the narrator, the conscious self that is telling a story. And we do that all the time. Like when we are driving, we are not thinking, okay, here I'm driving. No, we just drive. We are immersed in the activity. When we are dancing, when we are cooking. But Csikszentmihalyi, an American Hungarian psychologist, he, like almost 30 years ago, he really put the method into the minds of psychologists, or the concept into the mind of psychologists, by showing that in every culture, he found individuals, no matter their age, no matter their education, that were engaged in skillful activity. And in the process of doing the skillful activity, basically they lost themselves in the act of doing the activity. And that experience of flow usually was accompanied by a great sense of ease and well-being. And I remember the first time I read his article, I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. But it was like 15 years ago, and it was not as famous and well recognized as it is right now, because what they have been doing for all these years is to find that the phenomenon is real, that it applies for every skill that people cultivate, and in every culture and at every age. And there are 8 elements of flow. And I try to the best of my ability, to recreate these elements of flow in the program that we call the Wisdom Project Fundamentals. And I'm going to read the 8 characteristics of flow that Csikszentmihalyi describes. 1 is complete concentration on the task. 2 is clarity of goals. You know where you are going. And having a reward. The mind immediately knows, I'm doing right, I'm doing wrong. We practice with the tools, and we have the sense if things are going well or not. 3rd, it happens to people that they feel that the time is speeding up or slowing down, transformation of time. 4th, that the experience is intrinsically rewarding, that people feel good of doing what they are doing. Number 5, it feels effortless and it feels at ease. Number 6, there is a balance between the challenge of doing the activity and the skill that you have to do the activity. If you make the activity too harsh, people are not in flow anymore. They're just like, okay, let me remember how to drive the bike. If it's too easy, they are bored. Oh, okay, here we go again doing the same thing. So there is this balance of skill and challenge that you have to pursue. 7, you are taking the action and your awareness is merged with it. You lose self-conscious rumination. When you have a difficulty, you have to stop and think, okay, now what should I do with the keys and the brake and the accelerator? But normally, when you are in the zone, you are in flow, you know you are driving, you don't think about that. So that self-conscious rumination disappears when you are in flow. And then number 8 is that there is a feeling of control. You can do the task. You can do the task. So what I have been doing for many years in my work as a facilitator is to try to create those 8 elements of flow, because it has been proven that people learn more. People not only have this sense of well-being, but they know more. So flow is a very important element of creating the community and the space that I have organized for the Wisdom Project. So I feel enormous reward when somebody like Melissa, before class number 5, is already saying, oh, there is this sense of flow, not only during the sessions, but you bring that sense of flow outside in what you are doing things. And I clearly remember that because you were describing how you were doing the same thing. You're a very busy person, but there was a sense of flow in the way you moved throughout your day. Does it make sense that flow is so important in the understanding what is that we do in the Wisdom Project?
Yeah, it makes sense. Lots of sense for me. And maybe even something to add to it, is that it feels like the way you experience flow is like a signal you're getting when you're doing things in your own style, because this is how you do things, so it's less effortful for you. And at least from my own experiences, I've noticed that when I recognize how I do things and what it feels like, then I'm actually able to replicate flow experiences in different scenarios and different activities, because I'm less concerned about doing it according to how it's been defined, but rather to do it the way I believe is right. And every time I do it that way, I easily get into flow with it. And this has been very helpful for me to explore things that I never thought I'd be doing, like, all the creative activities in music, in art, and, all other creative works, because, when it's defined to be done a certain way, you get so worried. It's like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm qualified to do it. I don't think I can learn to do it that way. But when you learn what it feels like when you're doing it right, then you're looking to get into that experience. And when you get there, then you're no longer concerned about doing it about the way it's been defined, but rather to pursue that flow experience. And as you do that, it's happening like how you described. Like, you're not worried about you know how it should work. You just worried. You're more concerned about having the experience, and usually at the end of it, the end product is good. Uh, Even like with cooking, it used to be a very big concern for me, because the recipe, you have to measure it. It has to be exactly 2 spoons. But then when you realize, oh no, those are just guidelines. The end goal is something that tastes good. I know what something that tastes good tastes like, and I know what is off, what is making it not taste as good as I would want it, and I can trust that my taste of what is good, I'm gonna know. And so that's the new guideline. So I no
Yeah,
longer need the recipe, because now I know what tasting good is like. So now I'm just gonna look for the good taste. So yeah, it's very good. Like when you learn to do that.
I don't know how we do it, and I don't know of research explaining how it is that we do it. But as you said, once you have the flavor of that, you want to replicate it. Once you know that you can be in flow at work, you want to be in flow at a social party. Like I went to a party on Saturday, and there was only one person I knew, and they were like, I don't well, two, my husband and my husband and the guy who invited me. And again, I didn't think consciously that I was going to replicate flow, but I did it. And so it was, of course, a very pleasurable experience. And when I stopped feeling it, almost 3 hours had passed. So I said, okay, let's go. Let's go home. Yeah. Melissa, you want to add something?
When I was learning about flow, I was engaged in the development of my children, and I noticed that sports would put a skilled athlete in flow. So I had two of my children in pretty high level sports, and they would go into kind of that zone and be in flow. And then I noticed with my third child that she would do it during baking. I would sit across the counter in the kitchen and I would watch her making pie crust. And she was maybe 13. My husband bakes and had taught her. And it was just really neat to watch her go into this state where she knew what she was doing. She knew what the goal was. You could see her mind at ease. It's just an interesting thing about teaching flow that has been on my mind as I really understood the concept through those stages of development. I still find it really rewarding to sit across the counter when my daughter's baking, especially when she's making pie crust passed down from the great-grandmother to the grandmother to the father to the daughter. And there's something very beautiful and old about what's happening that she's learned. And so the boys learned, I think, more in soccer and swimming and running, right? And then, all of those activities can create flow, and it's neat to watch it learned.
And as I said, when we started recording these sessions about the framework that we cultivate, the 7 skills, the 7 cognitive styles of wise reasoning, ritual is important. I call the whole method the real method, ritual engagement with artifacts, with things created by humans in pursuit of the liminal, in pursuit of change. Because ritual is about flow. When we are in a ritual, we are in flow. So flow is, a new concept developed by or acknowledged by psychology, Csikszentmihalyi, but it's something that we humans do because rituals have been present in every culture in humanity. We all participate in rituals that provide flow. When, we are drumming, boom, 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 and dancing, suddenly we are in this flow. When we are in church singing, then we're in flow. So it's an experience that is spread across human experience and cultures. So why is it important for us? And this is a paper from John Vervaeke that he says that we cultivate flow because it generates a cascade of insights. Like he says, an insight is aha, but apparently with flow is aha, 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 a cascade of insights. And again, this part is like he proposes, he says, I propose, therefore it's not empirical data. But in my personal experience as a meditation teacher and as a management consultant, creating experiences of flow allows people to reframe. If I create an experience of flow with a group of people at an organization that is being challenged with a particular issue, business type problems, creating experiences of flow. There are many ways of creating them, okay? That's why the artifacts, the tools, the mindware that I use can be changed. I use a particular set of mind tools or mindware in the the fundamentals program of the Wisdom Project, but there are many others that I could use. And the idea of changing the tools is because you want to create that experience of flow that generates insight, that generates a new way of seeing the problem, that allows people to reframe the way they see a particular challenge. We create an understanding of a problem, and then we experience what we call cognitive grip, that we don't want to release. This is the way I understand it, therefore don't make me move. And we do that because another psychological concept called the cognitive miser, M-I-S-E-R, that the brain is a cognitive miser because it takes so much time to apprehend a reality in a certain way that then you don't want to let that go. So once you understand that a lady with an accent and long hair is nice or dangerous, or somebody to, whatever, you don't want to lose that. That's your interpretation of the lady, and that's it. So the brain is a cognitive miser that doesn't want to have cognitive flexibility, doesn't want to let go. But when you experience flow, naturally, you go through those aha moments that allow you to reframe the experience. So I don't have enough empirical data, or even John Vervaeke has not produced the empirical data to say that flow is pursued because the cascade of insights that it creates, the reframing and new ways of interpreting what's going on that it creates. But it seems like a valid speculation. And the fact that is in the form of ritual, the cultivation of flow is present in so many cultures, gives some credence to the fact that, yes, that's what we do. And as I like to say, we are not Homo sapiens as much as Homo faber, the hominid that sapiens means the wise. We think we are the wise. Well, not really. What distinguishes us is the historical record of artifacts that humans have created in the last 7,000 years. That's what makes the difference with the different species that existed on Earth, our ability to create things. And to create things, you have to be in flow. Why? Because, as you said, Clayton, if you are cooking and you don't know what you are doing, you cannot be in flow. It's when you have practice cooking, when you have practiced bacon, Melissa, when you have practiced soccer as your children, or football, when you have practiced, there is a moment where the combination of the skill and the difficulty of the moment are in synchronicity, are in harmony, and then you are in flow. And flow generates those moments of insight. So flow, even though I always wait to mention it almost at the end of the program, because if I say, let's just pursue flow, I don't think it will happen. At least I have never tried in my work. I just wait for flow to happen. And sometimes not necessarily all the time, and explain why it's so important to the whole design of the experience. Many times I don't have to explain it. So I introduced the concept of flow when we were doing the Wisdom Project Fundamentals course, but now I'm sharing with you why it is so important, why it is crucial in the design. I dream of being able to create Wisdom Project teacher training program where people will bring their own challenge. I want to create a wisdom project for adolescents, or I want to create a wisdom project for corporations, and then we will walk in designing the flow experience for that particular challenge of them. Any comments?
I think I have a question about pursuing flow and what your thoughts are about whether that is productive or not productive. Pursuing flow. I know you can cultivate flow, and maybe that's different. But if the goal really is focused on flow, I wonder what you think.
Well, in my design, when I'm thinking, somebody called me recently, if I'm doing, it's called lean or Kaizen or agile events. Are you still doing it, Iris? Because I did some work for them 2 or 3 years before COVID. And when I do the design, I want to create that experience. I'm thinking, how do I put this group of people, like, with them, it was like 23 people, and there were 2 people who were very challenging, not only to me, but to the need for the project. And how do I create an experience where there is flow? From the outside, I combine the tools to create that. For me, it takes the form of creating a ritual. Of course, imagine if you go to an organization where they are trying to invent a new drug, for instance, and they are all executives. They, if I say I'm going to create a ritual, they will like, but I create a ritual by repeating, the way I start, the way we move to the middle, the way we move to the end, by emphasizing sometimes in an explicit way, sometimes in an implicit way, what I call the 4 commitments that I repeat, that the process requires courage, presence, compassion, and kindness. Because when we engage in this transframing, we discover things that we don't like, or we have to release the grip of something. This woman is my enemy, or, I cannot work with her. So Iris is going to notice that, and Iris is going to put you in the same group. So you have to challenge your understanding of that woman as a witch, you see? So with different words, depending on the group, I pursue these 4 commitments: courage, presence, compassion, and kindness, because otherwise the transframing, the new understanding of the particular challenge or the particular group that I want to create will not work. Yet, having said that, yes, in my design, I consider the 8 characteristics of flow that I listed at the beginning here. I considered how to make it like a ritual. So people, as soon as they enter into the 3rd class, you can see that they already know they're going to enter into a different space. It happens without you telling them, using the distinction that John Verbicki makes between the propositional, the knowledge in words, and the participatory, the being there, the having mode of words, and the being there of the experience. You don't say you're going to create flow. You don't say you're going to create transframing. You just do it. And then people, as soon as they come the 2nd time and they see something is different in the way we are gathering together, and then they come the 3rd time, we enter into a space, and this is my analogy of when I go to church. That you go and there is this reverential space, this space that something is going to happen. Or when I go to my meditation center, that I try to pinpoint that is in there. But as soon as I go there, it's like I enter into a different space. I call it a space of transformation. And that's what I strive to create when I do that. But, Melissa, thank you for your question, because if I say to somebody, I'm going to create flow for you, I don't think that will work. I don't think that will work. People would be focusing on, okay, how do I do this in a way that I am completely concentrated, that my goals are clear, the reward is immediate. I won't be feeling the time going normally, but speeding up, slowing down. They won't be able to do it. The other day, a colleague of mine that I'm working with to develop a wisdom project program, he wanted to call it pursuing purpose. And I'm like, pursuing purpose is, I don't know. It's just, how do you teach somebody to find its purpose in life? No, it's just focus on a project and the project will work by itself. And then you will see if that gives you more meaning or more purpose in life. That's kind of the way I see it. But you can challenge me. This is experimental, basically. But I rely on the fact that forever we have created rituals. And rituals are all about flow. You let yourself go into the ritual. And that's what I rely on.
And I ask the question because in my observation, watching another person, watching my teenager go into flow, there's no focus on flow. There's a focus on learning the texture of the pie crust, learning the position in the match, right? There's a focus on the ritual that's handed down and learning it and doing it correctly and positioning yourself until you're relaxed and you just know. But there's no focus on the state of your mind or that goes into that. It's just, you just learn it and then you're in the flow.
Exactly. The focus is on the doing it and doing it right. Mm-hmm. Doing it for the good of baking, for the good of the tradition of baking passed down throughout the generations. And now you are the doer, the manifester of that gift your family has been cultivating, you see? So, and in the doing, flow happens. So for me, as a designer of the experience, when I see people bringing, oh, it feels like flow, even though they're perhaps not saying it in the psychologist sense, but just feeling that, oh, it feels like flow. I'm bringing flow into my workday, into my family interactions. I'm doing my design is working. But as you said, you cannot tell your daughter, now, 1, 2, 3, flow. No. Yeah.
And something to add to that, I think, you've both touched on it. It has to do with the experience. It's all about getting into the experience that unlocks your flow. And I think that's it. Like if someone knows an experience that puts you into flow, they can use that to expand your learning capability in very many ways. I've been experimenting this with my 8-year-old son, using his love for mathematics to teach him all other things that, he can benefit and learn to enjoy without him being interested in them. An example is, I like going for runs. He wanted to train for, they had a cross-country run at school, and he wanted to train for it. So I tried to teach him this, but it's very hard for him to want to learn it because he's not a very athletic person. It's not something he wants to do. He doesn't want to get up early to do it. But I know he loves his mathematics and his multiplication tables at this stage. So I interested him to come with me. We'll go and practice his multiplication tables while trying to have a bit of a jog. But the focus is the multiplication tables.
So you're running and doing math?
No, we're just running. We're having a little jog, but our focus is, talking through the multiplication tables. And before we know it, we finished the run. And it's sort of like his interest in mathematics is allowing him to enjoy the mathematics while doing something else that he's not noticing he's doing, but he's actually developing the physical, the muscle training for it. And after we did this, about 10 times, he's getting very good at memorizing his multiplication tables. And so he's waking me up and saying, hey, Dad, we gotta go to practice our multiplication tables, but we're really actually going for a run. And so it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone. Because he's very excited about his multiplication tables. I'm very excited that he's actually exercising. I'm not very good at math, but I mean, given how much math I've seen, it's okay. Multiplication tables are fine. Yeah, but
That's an
it's his key. It's his key into flow. So, yeah.
I wish I had known these methods when I was raising my son. I see my sister using them with her children. The youngest is now 20, but that introducing an activity that captivates them while they participate in another activity that the father or mother wants them to participate on. That's powerful. Yeah. All right. Melissa, you want to add something?
I'm really just thinking about this issue of flow, and the only thing I have to add is I should contemplate on flow more often. I find it valuable when I do, and I forget, which is like many concepts in the world of mindfulness work, is that we forget, and I need methods to practice and remember.
Yeah. So one of them is to keep the community going, because we remind each other of what we want to practice and achieve. But my secret, powerful magic tool for flow is the body scan. It's the Buddha technique of paying attention to whatever arises in your mind, your sensations, your thoughts, your emotions, and then don't doing anything about it, because the skill that you are developing is noticing. And as you can remember, I combine those two all the time throughout the program. Doing the body scan, we do it at least twice every time we get together, and noticing what's happening in what is called the triangle of awareness, the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations of the body. And when you observe that, you enter into flow. The time seems to not exist, and that's why people are able to stay the whole day meditating with very small interruptions, day after day after day. And it brings you, as flow does, all this experience of insight, of reframing, of understanding a problem in a different way. So my secret weapon for flow and for keeping myself alive and curious about the world and humble. Oh, because that another thing that insight brings is that you realize, oh my gosh, I was understanding this in the wrong way. It happens all the time. And the body scan is there to teach you that. I had an incredible experience this past week. We had a baby shower for my sons and my daughter-in-law, who are having a baby in 2 months. And then when I came home, he calls me very moved by the beautiful baby shower that friends organized for them, but also concerned about the baby and da-da-da. And I decided, even though he was really emotional, and I think I know a lot, or, I know a lot, I decided not to have an interpretation of it, because that's not the way he is. It was very surprising. He started crying, and I think I told you last week that. So I just let myself be, and then suddenly I had an insight with a body scan, and then the next day another insight, and then the next day another insight. And I am still processing the series of insights that I had the reframing that I had Monday after we recorded, then Tuesday, and then Wednesday with one experience. Because instead of putting a cap on it, instead of giving it an interpretation and then moving on, I just sat with it. And, to give you an example, my husband said, all right, so you're going to change that part because the insight about him, my son, brought about an insight about my friend, and me holding the interpretation about my friend, then 2 days later brought an interpretation about an issue that I have. So my way of not forgetting is to practice the body scan. My way of bringing the insight that a ritual, that flow brings, is using the body scan, which is awareness of what's happening in your mental space, be it a sensation, an emotion, or a thought. And we do it as the Buddha. This is a technique that is 2,500 years old. The way he taught it and the way I practice and I teach it is from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, and then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's I believe, the most powerful weapon of the most powerful mind tool of the toolkit that the Wisdom Project Fundamental offers. Yeah. Okay, there is another one that I'll mention next, but yes. Any comments about that? The body scan as a tool, as a mindware, something that I carry with me all the time to help me navigate life in a wiser way.
Yeah, I use it the whole time it's kind of like getting into what Viveki calls the stance. It's like you need to get into the correct stance so that you can actually do the things you need to do. Like if you're fighting, for example. But if you use the same analogy for, trying to reorganize yourself, like trying to recenter yourself, the body scan is a very extremely effective tool, because in a space of 2-3 minutes, you can really relocate yourself. I don't know if you've used those mapping applications, and you try to scroll to see where you're going, and it gives you the recenter button. Then you hit it and it puts you back exactly where you need to be. It's kind of like that. At least that's what I've experienced with it. Really puts you back where you need to be and gives you the appropriate, you'd say, perspective to look at things. So yeah, I find it very, very powerful.
Yeah, it centers you in the present moment, because we have all these experiences that constitute what we call Iris or Clayton of Melissa. And then the world comes to us and we generate an understanding of what's coming to us, but that not necessarily is the reality of what is coming to us, because I could understand it different than you, Clayton, and you, Clayton, could understand it different than Melissa, and Melissa could understand it different than me. That's what happens. It's called predictive processing theory, that we predict and process depending on the past. There is a scientist who even says that our brain is hallucinating all the time, and it's reality that comes towards, there's a direction of influence, the brain predicting this is what's gonna happen, and then reality hitting you. And it's that the confluence of the inner and outer influence that creates what we understand as reality. And the body scan brings us to that reality when it's not according to fit. When I'm just predicting that, ladies with an accent will be dangerous to me, the body scan allows me to review things by not creating a cognitive grip on my son's experience and waiting to, 3 days in a row, because when you do the body scan meditation, thoughts come and you notice them and you don't try to create stories about them, allowing it to come back and for a few days gave me a great insight into areas that I was not suspecting it will bring it. So that's one of the most powerful tools that in my toolkit that I try to share with people. And I think, well, perhaps many other people are doing it or have done it, but my own innovation, the way I have been trained, is that I am bringing it to the world. You know, I'm telling people, yes, if you want to go to a 10-day retreat, like the ones I like doing, do it. If you want to come and take I have an 8-week class where I teach basically the body scan and another 2, but basically it's about the body scan. It's a mindfulness training. Do it. But you can also bring the meditation out of the meditation room and bring the body scan to everything you do when you are in a meeting and then something strong happens. Instead of going into your normal reaction, just do the body scan. And it opens a window into a new interpretation of reality. And I'm impressed because I'm doing research with this professor, Michael Mascolo. We are hopefully writing a paper we should send it for publication in the middle of September. And so I collected interviews with people, and I'm amazed how people in very stressful situations are using the body scan to gain a new interpretation of reality, of whatever is happening there. So it's really moving to see that the person is in the situation, you know, like acting with a disrespectful boss that is yelling at you, and at the same time focus on the body scan, and at the same time noticing the way you are reacting to the difficult interaction, and basically saying, I cannot believe it's me, that I'm doing these 3 things at the same time. It's a heightened state of awareness that it creates when you practice. Because as we have said many times, and I repeat that, it teaches you to notice. And I say noticing. It expands your awareness of what's happening in reality.
I would add something you and I had an individual conversation about, which is the 4E cognition and embodiment. I find that when I'm in need of the body scan, I'm not embodied. I'm all in the head, in thought and images and the mental movie, and it puts me back into my body. And that's necessary in those moments. And so that's where my mind is often as I'm doing the body scan, is that I'm not embodied, and I have to come back and be in reality in my body in order to get in touch with whatever is happening.
Yeah, the body scan is 2,500 years old, but it has remained enclosed behind the doors of monasteries or behind the doors of spiritual practice, mainly Buddhist practice. And, you know, for the last few decades, it has become more and more popular. Mindfulness has become more and more popular in the West. But still, it's not something that we should, in my opinion, we should teach the kids, because they get lost in the fabrications of the hallucinating brain instead of being present, and which gives you the ability to be more effective in your actions in the world. So for me, my innovation is taking it out of the meditation room and bringing it into a concrete situation, the particular project that people wants to develop in the Wisdom Project, to help you execute, to help you manifest. And as you said, Melissa, is now, because at the beginning, when I started doing rituals many, many years ago, the embodied, embedded, and active mind concept was not as popular as it is right now. Now is the way we understand minds, that the mind is not only the brain, but also the body. So that the mind is not something that happens, as you said, in some level of reasoning with words and representations, but it's something that we enact, that we need to walk to be able to run. And as we walk and run, and then we can drive. So it's like all the time interacting with the world. The mind is enacted, and the mind is embedded in the sense that if you put me in an environment, if you put me at a library, that's my favorite because I love libraries. You put me in a library, I can love the rows and the names and the classification is my element. But if you put, I don't know, my 3-year-old niece, she would be completely lost. So the library offers me a connection with the world that she still doesn't have. So the mind is extended and embedded in the world, and is enacted and is embodied, like Melissa said. And the body scan brings you back to that reality, that the mind is the body. And perhaps not us, or perhaps not even our grandchildren, we learn to stop using those terms, the mind, the brain, and the heart, because the mind is both of them, it's all of them, it's our body. Yeah. Okay. I cannot believe that it's almost an hour. All right. So that was all for understanding. You see, we don't do none of this understanding while we are practicing. Both of you came twice to the program, and all this explanation was not there because what we had was the experience. But this concept of flow, this idea of transframing, is what was behind everything we did. And we cultivated understanding because I mentioned flow, and because I mentioned S1 and S2, in the sense that S1 is who you are right now, and S2 is who you aspire to be, and that's how we started. And I introduced the concept of the imaginal, that future self of yours that is very felt, very embodied. So we cultivated that understanding in that way. We cultivated understanding because I did explain the difference between implicit learning that we do all the time and explicit, that, is when you teach multiplication to your son, but when he's running with you, he's implicit learning that he's doing with his father, the air, the nature, blah, 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 waking up early, etc. And that implicit learning is what becomes our intuition, and we talked about that. So I have been presenting pieces of understanding throughout the whole 7 weeks, but what grounds it is that idea of creating flow, or in other words, of experiencing the being together as a ritual. Which is something that we all have done forever, because rituals are part of being human. And another tool that is very important to create new understandings is the way that we manage conversation. And another sage, Socrates, became very, very famous, and still very famous, because he promoted dialogues. And his Socratic method is basically teaching by asking questions instead of teaching by offering explanations. Asking one question after the other, and then the person who is asking the questions is creating answers to it. And there are many types of dialogues, and I hope to do a series only on dialogues. But the one that we practice, and it's again, like the body scan, a very important tool to continue the development of wisening, of wise reasoning, is the conversation, what we call the mindful conversation. That also, as we did with the body scan, we use a lot during the program. Why? Because we are all engaged in conversations with ourselves and with the others, with our future selves and with the past. And we follow a format. But if I want to reframe the way I do conversations with myself, with my past selves, with my future self, I impose a new structure, a dialogue structure, And the particular one that we use at the Wisdom Project Fundamentals is called Intersubjective Meditation by Tanya Singer, who is an affective neuroscientist. And I tweaked and changed little things around what she does, and we call it mindful conversation. So by breaking the way we do regular conversation, we create those spaces. At the beginning, you know, and if I read my notes, and when I interview people at the beginning, people feel it's very scary because you enter into a space of intimacy with another person quickly. And we are doing these programs right now remote, so on a screen. And then you can see how they develop a sense of togetherness and intimacy as time goes by. And then they start relying on mindful conversations. And I remember, I don't know if it was you, Melissa, who after the third class, you were using mindful conversations with your colleagues at work. You know, which is...
That was me.
Yes, yes. Do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, the structure of a mindful conversation is the way we work in the psychological world. Because I'm, you know, as a psychiatrist, right, I'm listening. There's a ritual of gathering information and listening that is very practiced for me, but I realized I had an insight that I would leave the treatment room and go into the hallway and speak to my colleague, my staff member, the receptionist, the manager, without any of those tools. And I wasn't, you know, and I go into the room, the door closes, and I go into a flow state that's very, and then I'm in the hallway and it's none of it's with me. And so I started being conscious to try to bring that out into the hallway. And I think it made a difference in the interaction for the other person. I didn't ask, but it made a lot of difference for me. It's just so funny. Funny is, you know, funny odd that I'd never noticed that I was away, mindfully attentive, listening, pausing, taking time in the treatment room, but in the hallway, rushed, missing each other, not understanding, full of, you know, frustration and like a tug of war with the person. It's just so funny. Anyway.
Yeah. So the Wisdom Project program made you aware that you could bring this flow space that you create for your patients into your life, into the outside world, outside the therapeutic room, into your business area, because you manage your own office. Yeah, that's for me, that's precious, because that's what I try to achieve. Why leave these things inside a bubble? The bubble of the psychologist or the bubble of the meditation teacher. No, let's just bring it to the world. That's the whole idea of the Wisdom Project. And that's why the motto is changing our world one project at a time. Because you bring a project to the Wisdom Project, you see how the tools work, but that mindware is already with you, so you can take it to the next project, and then to the next, and to the next, and to the next. That's the whole idea. So that brings me to the last cognitive style of the journey. The whole Wisdom Project is geared towards creating transformation. We create transformation when we start with aspiration, with this idea of moving towards something that we still don't know what it is, that we think we know kind of, but not totally, because we want to be wiser, we want to be like the sages. And we use the example of Agnes Kalar, the philosopher, who writes about how it is that when we want to be, let's say, that's her example, a mother, we think we know, but we don't know. So moving ourselves towards the liminal, towards the transformation where there is no clarity. That's how we start. And then we also use throughout the whole program flow, trying to create flow. As I said, there are many ways, but we use particular tools like the body scan in the fundamentals program. And finally, hopefully, if things have gone well, that so far, yes, it has been going well with the different cohorts, inviting transformation. I like to say transcendence, but sometimes I'm not so sure that's the word that I should pursue. But pursuing transformation, which basically means do something that is novel for you. Do something like learning a new language or looking for a new job or this is the work of another woman, a philosopher called L.A. Paul, and she talks about becoming a vampire, and that you think you would like to be a vampire because, you know, whatever, you live forever and you keep your youth with you, at least if you don't get exposed to sun rays. So, but you never really know what to be a vampire is. So she invites people to pursue transformative experiences. And I try to bring that to the Wisdom Project at the end to cultivate that cognitive style of pursuing transformative experiences by bringing something that I don't know how much people are using it, something called the sprint cycle, which is a tool that Clayton, I guess, you use a lot, and it's used a lot in business. So you set yourself goals at a short period of time that are achievable at a short period of time, and you keep yourself accountable. So you can say, I want to become a vampire, but then the question is, when are you becoming a vampire? Can we measure that in 4 weeks, what the progress would look like? Oh, in 4 weeks I can. Okay, let's do 8 weeks. What could you achieve? You know, try to make it concrete, because if not, it will never happen. We will revert back to our previous things. So because I introduced this at the end of the program, and I have, when I interview people, I let them tell me what tools are working. And they're working, but they don't give me feedback through the lens of the sprint tool. But that's one way that I try to introduce transformation. So to summarize, I try to introduce transformation through aspiration to the examples of the sages, through bringing flow throughout the whole experience, and finally, to inviting transformation in the way of a very practical tool that I have used forever in my work as a consultant, which is called the sprint cycle. You know, do a sprint and measure the result. What am I doing? And that goes with the whole design of Wisdom by Design, because design is not something that happens in the laboratory of an architect. Design is what we do all the time. Clayton is designing the interaction with his son to make him a more athletic individual who loves math. You know, we are all the time designing. You know, your daughter is designing her own way of doing the family traditional pies, and she will transmit that to her daughter. We are all the time engaged in designing, and designing is acting for the good. For an abstract good, no, it's the good of the particular project. Okay, so that's the last cognitive style, the cognitive style of transformation. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect summary. It's what all these tools are working towards, and they all build up to, you know, enable that technique of bringing about that continuous transformation. Because once you learn to do it once, then you're going to want to do it again. And if you really lean into the understanding, getting into the flow and getting to the results of what you're going to get with all the new shifting perspectives and the new insights where they get you, then you see that progress, then you can replicate. And the more you replicate, then you're continuously becoming that imaginal self that you want to become. And it's a perfect summary. I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think I would say that the transformations are small, and that was something that it was useful to think about, is that when we think about mindful transformation, maybe we think about something big and one single goal. But for me, to release myself from the grip of a way of thinking and have a little transformation and a little transformation, each one improves my well-being and my functioning and makes life better. And so it really is, I think that's key, the series of small changes and insights and understandings that are transformations.
Yes, as one of my favorite, I have many, but one of my favorites mindfulness teachers says, it's not enlightenment per se, this big moment of enlightenment, but every time we reach those insights, we have little moments of enlightenment, and that's what we have to cultivate. And I learned talking with Clayton about a year and a half ago that he said, you, Clayton, it's not that I pursue enlightenment. I just want to fly closer to the light every day, do the best I can. And that's what we are trying to do, one project at a time, reaching small moments of insight, pursuing flow to continue doing it so we can transform ourselves, our lives, our families, our workplaces, and hopefully also our communities. So thank you very much, Melissa and Clayton, for doing this for us and for the community. And soon I'll see you again.